I'm honored to speak to you today during the 50th anniversary of Raintree and how Raintree came about. A development I first got involved with in 1970, some 52 years ago, when I started working for a company called Levitt and Sons as their Los Angeles development manager. Prior to working for Levitt, I was a real estate developer in the San Fernando Valley, building single family homes, tract homes, and apartment buildings. I also co-produced in 1967 the first Spider-Man animated TV series consisting of 20 half-hour episodes. Thank you. Started by Bill Levitt for returning GIs after World War II, Levitt and Sons was a developer of large-scale suburban housing developments like Levittown in Long Island, New York. Built in the 1950s, Levittown is considered the first truly mass-produced community suburb. The first Levittown homes sold for $7,900, and in a short period of time, 17,000 homes were sold, providing homes for 84,000 people. Levitt and Sons sold to IT&T in 1967 for a reported $62 million. When Levitt and Sons wanted to expand to the West Coast, I was hired in 1970 to scout out Southern California for real estate opportunities. It was an exciting time to be a developer in Los Angeles. The timing was fortuitous because it coincided with MGM selling off its studio lots. Working for Levitt, I purchased MGM Lot 3, a 65-acre parcel, which a part later became Raintree. Prior to my purchase, the property had zoning for filmmaking only, and I needed zoning for housing development. Culver City's relationship with MGM in the 60s and the 70s was fractured. In order to change the zoning, I spent considerable time working with the great mayor, Martin Lutz, and the city council to get the approvals. Once it was green lighted for residential building, I closed the deal. The first Raintree 564 condos and homes were built in 1972. We completed all construction in 1974. Raintree footprint consists of 6 condo buildings, which are 2 which are L-shaped, 4 are T-shaped. To design the condos, I selected Abraham Shapiro, a highly regarded century modern architect who had previously worked with me in the San Fernando Valley. In 1969, A. Shapiro partnered with architect William Kreisel and built many high-rise commercial and residential properties, including Santa Monica's Ocean Avenue Towers and Coronado Shores in San Diego. In 1971, I also purchased MGM Lot 5 on the southwest corner of Overland and Jefferson, which was developed, which we developed into the Raintree Plaza Shopping Center that still stands today, and I'm sure most of you have used it a time or two. I also purchased for $600,000 MGM Lot 6 on the northeast corner of Overland and Jefferson, which was developed into a gas station and car wash. All of the funds that Levitt paid for MGM property went into helping Krikorian develop his Las Vegas hotels. I understand that some of you in the audience bought condos and homes at Raintree in 1972, and 50 years later, you still live here as original owners. You are Raintree pioneers. Thank you, thank you for believing in Raintree. It's a testament. It's a testament to what a great housing idea it was and is. Conceived as residential development back in the spring of 1971, it is still greatly enjoyed today, 50 years later. Also in the audience, the first two visitors to visit the newly named Raintree property are my two children, who were 3 and 8 years old at the time. And before he was transformed into this amazing development, please wave, kids. 50 years ago, in 1972, when the first residents moved into their new Raintree homes, was also the year of the great actor Edward G. Robinson. I don't know how many of you remember Edward G. Robinson. Starred in the classic movie Silent Green. The film, which came out 2 weeks before Robinson's death, or filmed before 2 weeks after it was completed, was partially filmed on this MGM lot. It was a precinct movie that predicted that in 2022, 50 years after the movie was produced, now there would be a dire future riddled with problems like food scarcity, pollution, and overcrowding. Serious issues that would be facing. I mentioned that story because Braintree is not at all the 50-year future of Silent Green. So why was the MGM lot up for sale? Let's cut to the backstory. 1947 was the beginning of an economic decline in studios when an antitrust decree divorced studios from their theater chains. It drastically reduced profits. Movie attendance was dropping as post-war audiences' tastes were changing. With the introduction of early 50s, in the early 50s, the movie industry suffered a substantial decline. MGM's value, as well as the returns from other studios like RKO, and Columbia, were shrinking. The new generation of movie viewers wanted to see actual locations in the 1960s, getting movie production to move away from the facade film sets. During the 1950s and 60s, MGM's profits rollercoated as the studio became dependent on a couple of hits to keep it afloat. In 1969, a very enterprising businessman, Kirk Kerkorian, bought MGM Studios for $650 million. He became successful, wealthy from his Las Vegas hotels and gambling operations, and opened up the MGM Grand in Las Vegas in 1973. But he had little interest, if any, in movie making. He purchased the MGM Studios to use the name MGM for his Vegas hotel developments. In 1970, shortly after he purchased, Kerkorian canceled many MGM film projects in production and cut MGM staff. Not at all interested in MGM as a film house any longer. In May 1970, at auction, he sold rolling stock over 12,000 movie props, including Dorothy's slipper worn in The Wizard of Oz, for $15,000. The same year, 1970, is when Kerkorian also started selling MGM film lots. for residential development. That's when Levitt and Sons and I got involved, 1970. We bought MGM Lot 3, and Krikorian used the proceeds to help fund his Vegas hotels. MGM Lot 3 also had a rich cinematic history. The movie Showboat, Meet Me in St. Louis, starring Judy Garland, and Stand Up and Fight with Robert Taylor are just some of the many classic films shot here. Along the $63 million gallon artificial lake near Jefferson and Overland, including the 1939 Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and Tarzan the Ape Man, starring Johnny Weissmuller, using the man-made lake to create a jungle-like setting. At the north end of the lake, across the stone bridge, were buildings used in the old movie Gone with the Wind. Here's an interesting, I find, behind-the-scenes tidbit about the making of the 1951 musical Showboat that was filmed on the 171-foot Mississippi Riverboat. The actress, Katherine Grayson, was dating Howard Hughes at the time of the filming. Howard Hughes, convinced that he was losing Grayson to her co-star, Howard Keel, repeatedly dive-bombed the riverboat in his noisy prop plane, ruining take after take in the shooting during the wedding scene between Grayson and Keel. The moral of the story is you don't mess with Howard Hughes. Here's another bit of Lot 3 trivia. In that 1970 MGM auction I mentioned earlier, the riverboat used in Showboat was sold for $15,000 to a Kansas City theme park. It's hard to imagine that children and adults would believe that Mississippi riverboats, pirate ships, Old West ghost towns, and New York City street facades stood where we are gathered today. While I was working on Raintree's development plans in the spring of 1971, I received a call from Playboy magazine owner Hugh Hefner, inviting me to visit his Playboy village he built in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Together, Hefner and I flew to Lake Geneva, where he gave me a tour of his luxurious resort. Then Hefner flew to LA to see MGM Lot 3 and wanted to purchase it to construct another Playboy village. And that Levitt would build for him. Despite his very generous offer, Levitt and Sons declined, as Levitt had established a great reputation for the development of family-friendly homes and felt any association with Playboy would tarnish Levitt's name. You may be wondering why this development is called Raintree. The name comes from MGM's 1957 Academy-nominated epic Civil War romance movie, Raintree County, starring Liz Taylor, Montgomery Clift. The movie, which was partially filmed on MGM Lot 3 and on multiple locations in the southern states of this country, was named after a fictitious Indiana county that had a legendary rain tree. The theme of the story is man's quest for the unattainable, searching dangerous swamplands for the rain tree, which was never found. As a child, I spent my youth growing up in Indiana. And I felt a personal connection with the name Raintree and used it for naming this wonderful development. It fits so well with the development's serene, woodsy park-like grounds and large, beautiful lake. As a side note, Raintree County was the most expensive MGM movie it ever produced. In the movie, the Raintree theme of the film was man's quest for the unattainable. But I feel that here in Raintree, you are living the dream and having found the unattainable. After viewing the 534 homes and the lake and landscape, it appears to be a community of very, very happy residents. It's the greatest residential development in Culver City and one of the finest developments on the west side. For those of you that would like to learn more about MGM's illustrious and fascinating history in Culver City, there is an excellent book entitled MGM's Greatest Backlot. So if anybody wants to buy it, it's available. Thank you for coming and continue to enjoy this beautiful place to live. Depending on the questions, I'm open for them.
Great job. I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but sometimes packages don't get to the right places here. In fact, we have locations that are places, courts, and drives that are right next to each other. I would like to know if you know who was the masochist that decided to have the street and building names very close to each other, yet being so far apart from each other. Who decided what the names were that the places, courts, and lanes and drives were so close together?
That's a good question, and I think it was decided by the Postmaster General. I really don't have an answer for you. That's a
phone number?
The one up here. Hi. So is the lake still the same configuration when you bought it? Was there any reduction or enlargement of the lake itself? And was Showboat and the pirate ship on the lake? And is there any remaining remnants of the studio, like passages or otherwise, anywhere on the property?
Are you talking about the outfall sewer?
I'm talking about the lake that we have here. If that had been enlarged or reduced from when you purchased it as you were developing the property.
Yeah, the lake was slightly larger, and it was stocked with a tremendous number of fish, but we needed to reduce it in order to get the development that we have here today. We couldn't live with the size of the lake that was here.
The other question was that every studio has access ways to get to different stages, below stages, above stages, behind rooms, everywhere. Were there any passages that remain from those days that you just left there because there was no reason to close them up? Is there any studio remnant of that production ability still left here in existence?
I don't think in our construction and layout, we took into any considerations about what was here before.
You mentioned the tunnel too. The tunnel from across the way.
Secret passageways.
If there was, I'd be hiding there now. Yes.
Well, I'd kind of like to add on to his question. There's a number of really interesting features around the complex that I'd love to know if they were existent when it was built. Like, for example, some of the rocks around the lake. People have nicknames for them. We call one over there Tarzan Rock, for example. And it'd be really fascinating to know if it was actually a remnant of the MGM backlot or if it was constructed as part of the similar. There's also some.
Okay, so no, and some of the things around the lake, like the rock, and the Tarzan rock, and those were here in what the property is that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or if you added that as part of the landscape.
Some are here, some we added to keep a certain continuity and architectural design.
Because it'd be really interesting to know if you have any examples of things that were here before. It'd be really fascinating.
The tree behind you, he's talking about that tree over there, and the big rock right over there.
Yeah.
He wants to know if that was there originally.
I don't know if it was original. We've added some and some were original. I can't say the one that you're pointing to. Somebody mentioned Tarzan. Johnny Weissmiller, as you know, was Tarzan.
Yes.
And after he retired, he became a spokesperson for people coming into the MGM Grand Hotel for Krikorian. Question right here.
Thank you. When you were building Raintree, the other two complexes, Prairie Hill and one by the corner, were they in existence then?
The adjoining property?
When when Terra was Terra Hill and here, when we started building Raintree, were these other two condo complexes?
Levitt & Sons, as I mentioned earlier, was purchased by IT&T, and an unusual order came down in 1972 when I was developing a lot of properties for Levitt here and elsewhere. IT&T had to divest itself from a tremendous number of its holdings. It owned hotels, Avis automobiles. It owns so much around the United States, including Levitt. Either divest itself from all of these properties so that it could buy Hartford Insurance. Hartford Insurance was a cash cow, and they elected to keep Hartford and required us to sell. So we could not develop the properties next to us, and we sold them off.
Thank you.
Sure. A longer answer than you wanted.
Hi. Thank you for the presentation. I just want to say I was born and grew up in Levittown, Rhode Island. And I moved here 6 years ago. We moved here, we bought from Jane and Shirley, and in the course of the conversation, it came out that I was from Levittown. They mentioned this was developed by Levittown. And coming, I almost fell over. I never knew that they had it. I know about Levittown. It's famous. I lived there until I was 22, my whole life. And so one thing that was a question to me was why Levittown is famous for being the first suburban community of homes all the same. Why this was developed as condos and townhomes rather than single-family homes like Levittown that I thought was famous for.
The world changed a lot from 1950 when Levitt was building mass-produced homes. And in the late 60s, condo development was just starting here in Los Angeles. And we didn't build any condos. And we decided to have a mixture here of the single-family homes and apartments. And that's the way we built it. But I mentioned that we had, because of the problems with IT&T, we had to sell property. So we also sold the apartments to somebody who converted into condo. We didn't do that. So I can't speak to.
Condos were originally apartments.
Yeah.
They were original apartments done by Abe Shapiro.
The condos are an amazing configuration, the way that they're laid out, that completely defies everything else in the city. Why? Why was it configured in that way that it's so unique and creates a perfect acoustic environment? And a placid pool because there's no wind, but what was the idea behind it?
Part of the reason is not totally, but part of the reason is that running through that property is a Los Angeles County 11 or 12-inch outfall sewer. It's been running 11 and a half miles, and it runs right through the property, and it's very close to the surface. And it's made out of brick, 90 in the 30s. And we were prohibited from building just a certain distance from it. So part of the configuration had to do with that. If you probably look carefully, you'll see that there's access to the sewer, but the access is not the usual shape, round access that you see on public streets of a round steel manhole. It's a lengthy one, and the reason for that is so they can put a little canoe in there and check the inside of the tunnel to see if the bricks are decaying from 1930s.
Did you build the stream and waterfall, or was that already here?
The waterfall,
What's right behind us? Was that built by you guys, or was that already on the MGM property?
I think we built it.
Yeah, I'm curious, having read the book that you featured there.
This book?
Yeah, right. The plan or blueprint of the back lot 3 indicates that it included what, as an example, what is Yuki Lane, which is the dirt road that still exists on the outside, the east side of Raintree. That was used all the time by MGM to do scenes with cars. I think they paved part of it, so on and so forth. But our boundaries that left that out. So I'm curious how it was decided where the boundaries would be. I also feel like on the north side here, that you must have added land beyond the back lot when you developed this.
Well, when you say the north side is Jefferson.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I think of this side,
Yeah.
Jefferson there, this side, whatever.
Yeah, well, we didn't own that property. As a matter of fact, I mentioned in my discussion that I had numerous meetings and discussions with the great mayor of Culver City. And he owned that, and he had a business right there, and he was manufacturing something. Yes, sir.
Was there a problem during the building of Raintree of contractors going bust? I heard that there was more than one contractor having to come in, subcontractors, to pick up where others have left off because they couldn't continue. So was there a problem?
I have never been aware of that problem, but I can tell.
I went there, Lakeside Village.
Excuse me? Well, maybe in one of the other developments to the west of us, but not in Raintree. I wasn't aware of it. But in many cases, independent of us, contractors will bid on something and start and find that their bid wasn't appropriate, and they have a problem. But it didn't. I'm not aware of it happening here.
My name is Paul Jacobs. I'm former mayor of Culver City. I was on the planning commission when we approved your project. And listening to some of the questions about the other projects that were also approved by its time, I can tell you that like Raintree, we had all kinds of difficulty with those other projects, particularly flooding, garages, etc., etc. We moved to Culver City. We moved to Raintree. Bought Raintree 17 years ago. We have never been happy with it. So I want to thank you for working for
I applaud them. Yes,
Was the first time you said Abraham was your superhero?
Abraham Shapiro, yeah.
Yeah, they designed the contest. He also designed the town
No, Abraham Shapiro just did the apartments.
department.
Yeah, that's all he did.
Who designed the town?
There was another architect who did the residential, and his name escapes me now. Sorry. Yes.
Hi. First, I want to thank you for construction item, both the townhouses and the condos. They were both built with copper supply plumbing. The other developments in this area, built by different builders, were built with galvanized. All of those complexes have had to totally retrofit their units. And I know at that particular time, it was kind of an optional thing, whether it was never a city requirement that builders used copper instead of galvanized. And I just want to thank you that the construction has stood the test of time in that department.
Thank you. And one of the reasons why we did that, so on the 50th anniversary, we would get that compliment.
I'm glad I didn't fail you.
I want to mention as an aside, today's Saturday. Last Tuesday, I was on the phone with my insurance adjuster talking about updating my auto insurance. And I was about ready to hang up. And I said, I have to leave. I'm working on a project in Culver City called Raintree. And she says, no kidding. I said, why do you ask? She says, when I was 12 years old in the 70s, my mother was working there, and I came there and I kissed the first boy in my life. True story. Just happened this week. Yes.
Were the sales, the unit sell quickly when it was built?
Did the unit sell quickly?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Trees original, the MGM lot, or they do them somewhere else? Or how are they designed to be where they are?
I'm not sure.
Are the trees?
The tree.
Trees are the original.
Oh, at the combination, there was a lot of great landscaping here when they were using for the lake and the Tarzan movie, and we retained as much. And we also got a landscape architect who I hired, who was the landscape architect for Disneyland. I wanted to get the top, and so he integrated what we had and added what we needed. Yes.
I just wanted to mention, I moved in November of 1973. And my son, who's going to be 49, was the first child. I was 8.5 months pregnant. And my son was the first child.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's great. That's another Raintree achievement. Yes.
I'm probably a new kid on the block. I've only lived here for 4 years, going on 4 years. And I walk around the perimeter and around the lake. And I've done this almost every day. And I never tire of it. And I just want to thank you for doing such a magnificent job. It is so calming, it's so soothing, and it's just, if you're having a problem, all you have to do is walk around the lake.
Thank you for the compliment. But I had working for me people who maintained, who worked with the builders and the contractors and the landscapers, and they were very responsible. My position was not as in detail for some of the compliments that you're giving, but I appreciate it anyway. Yes.
I was going to say a little history. I live at Sayville Village Court, where the grass, all the grass, the football field, with grass. I got my house later than I got mine in 1973. The reason that I got it was because Southern California Edison was going to put the electricity overhead, and somebody, I guess Levitt, sued, and they couldn't sell my house. because as long as the soup was alive. And when I drove in to buy, that my house was open and they had just settled the soup. So you could thank Lemon for the fact that you walk and run your dogs off their leashes in front of my house.
Well, in 1971, there was this overhead line on the easterly portion of the property, and I didn't want it there any more than you want it there. So I started, I won't say litigation, but a lot of heavy discussion with them, and we underground that line so that we wouldn't have that problem.
I understand that the 1970s, I understand identifier. I couldn't find
So I didn't quite hear that.
Be a tag on every tree.
Yeah, there's.
Repeat
the question. Okay, I'm going to repeat the question. In 1972, I ran that you planted 5 trees Raintree on the property. I couldn't identify them, I couldn't find them. You know where they are.
As I mentioned in the movie Raintree, it was, I know, but in that movie, it was an elusive tree that they never found. Hey, I just want to mention to you that the longer you ask your questions, the longer it's going to take for you to get to the wonderful food they prepare.
I'm Jan Meekum. I'm the current president of the RTA board.
I'm Angie Okamura. I am the current president of the RCA board.
And we just wanted to let our homeowners know that there has been a plan by the boards. We are intending to hang a plaque in each of the townhouse clubhouse and the poolside clubhouse that will list all of our original owners. I believe Crystal is hoping to take a good photo. I hope you're all prepared for that, all our original owners. And noting that you have been here for 50 years and listing your names. So that is the more permanent respect that we want to show for everybody. But we have also prepared a very small and disposable keepsake for each of our owners. They're handmade, which means that they're imperfect. And also, it also means that they're not entirely identical to each other. We made a couple of samples of them. I'm going to show you, but we made a couple of samples of them. Crystal will be able to tell us where they are. They're going to be put out they're up at the top for anybody who wants to take a look. I would only ask, because there are some moving parts to it, that nobody walk away with the moving parts. And that said, we're going to start to give those out.
Why is that doing that?
No,
It's a feedback, just microphone.
Okay. All right. Jerry Kuno. Is he here? Okay. You're next.
Oh, I'm next. You are. And I will show. Oh, Candy Kane. Also not here. Well, I want to show everybody what it is. It's a booklet that contains a whole lot of information, because none of us remembers what 1972 was really like.
Andrea Lipson. Nope, not here. Got a lot of national.
I know. Yeah. Let's see. Edith Madick. Not here. Okay.
Michael Clemens. Nope. Wow, we're gonna
get.
This is gonna be good.
We are. Let's see. Paul Landau.
Berkeley Logan. Nope. Okay. We got a lot of people not showing.
All right. We'll get there. All right. Andy and Terry Howell. Lowell. Oh. My list said Howell. Forgive me, friends of the Lowells. I apologize.
Shirley, I don't know how to say the last name.
So Jaffe, it's not.
No, it's not you. Guys. Nope, okay,
No.
not
All
here.
right. Roberta Godfrey.
No. No.
Where's
That's the other Roberta.
Oh, the other Roberta's here. Okay.
Oscar and Sherry Kornblum? I mean, this is like not happening.
I
Something
know.
came out of that book.
Something came up. Oh, my goodness. Okay, I'll fix this, but Jackie Brooks. Give me a moment, Jackie, because I have an item that fell out of an envelope. So
Okay.
if you, here, maybe that one. If you find an empty
Thank
envelope,
you.
that
I'll
gets.
put that in there.
Roosevelt Williams.
Not here.
Oh, I saw him. Where is he? Rudy. No. Okay.
Move on. Okay.
Oh, there he is. Rudy.
Oh.
Are you sure? Thank you.
And Barbara Goodson.
I was supposed to take off the tire.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Clarissa Wilkinson.
You don't need that. You know who you are. All right. Oh, Shirley Jaffe.
Iris. Just that. Thank you so much.
And Jackie Hill.
Look at the AK.
Oh, that's awesome. Carol Pudlin. Yay.
Rose Uino. Yeah, okay. Let me get your name off, Rose.
Okay, thank you so much. Louise Ruffio. Okay.
Okay. Roberta Holt. Hey. There you are, Roberta. That was you.
Yeah, Vivian Gilliam. Sorry. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we got one more. We got one more.
One more. Mark Workout.
It was my mother who moved in here first. I moved her in 76 when it was converted from condos to apartments.
Full disclosure.
Yeah, full disclosure. Thank you so much, everybody. And another round of applause for our original one.